hello, and welcome to episode 55 of Gondor Calls for Ale, a Middle-earth strategy battle games podcast. I am your host, Sam Gallagher, and with me, as always, is my brother Ben.
Hello, listeners and viewers. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, welcome back. If you've been here before, welcome. If it's your first time, we hope you find us entertaining as we endeavor always to be. It has been a little while since we've recorded one of these, so I'm sure this will be a bit more of a rusty episode.
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about that today, Sam, and as far as our faithful viewers and listeners are concerned, it's just like every 2 weeks we're just producing these episodes. But we go through like periods where we record a whole bunch, and we haven't recorded one in like 2 or 3 weeks. It feels a bit weird now. Might even be going on 4. So
it's kind of, you sort of get into a rhythm of doing these events, recording, especially if it's a multiple part episode, you record them close together quite often, and then sort of go into a more standard life, and makes it a little like, wait, what? How do we do this again? Speaking of how we do things, Ben, of course, the next thing that we always do that we have sort of talked over a little bit is the ale that Gondor has called for. So I have to ask you, what are you drinking this fine evening?
Well, Sam, you know me. For this episode, I went and got something special. I have myself a Bilbo's birthday brew. This is a beer that I know less than half as well as I should like, and half of which I should like less than half as well as it deserves.
Very good. A little on theme for the event this time. I like it.
Absolutely, you know me. And what about you, Sam? What are you drinking for this episode?
Well, Ben, appropriately, I'm having a beer that I started a year ago for this very tournament, and I'm finally getting to it, Ben, because I'm having a Moran and Mold mead, a mead made mean for the many maggots of Mordor.
Nice. Delicious. Delicious.
That was, of course, in reference to last year we were going to attend Bilbo's birthday bash 2. But went to the wrong store. So, at that point, we were still just doing audio only. So we were doing pre-records before we record the intro part of an episode before we went to an event, and then talked about the event. So we recorded the beer I was drinking while talking about the event, and then never went to the event. So there we go. There we have it, Ben. And I think with that sort of covers our who we are and what we're drinking.
Tasty drinks.
And I think before we dive into some lists, Ben, the next thing that's worth saying is that we are, of course, sponsored by the Baron of Dice, a producer of premium wargaming dice. They are hand-swirled resin dice, perfectly balanced, guaranteed to roll 6s at least some of the time. And if you want to get yourself a set of Baron of Dice, he makes fantastic Lord of the Rings themed dice and dice for almost every other game system you can think of. You can use our affiliate link in the description of wherever you're listening to this podcast, and use our promo code, which is capital G, capital C, capital A, to get a nice little discount on that order. It helps him out, it helps us out, and helps show that we are worthy of continued sponsorship. So definitely, if you're looking for some new dice, consider looking no further than the Baron of Dice.
Yes, big thank you to the Baron, and of course a big thank you to all of our Patreons. We do really appreciate your support, and if you enjoy the show and are not a Patreon, do consider popping over to the Patreon. Give us an old support. You can buy me a beer, you can buy Sam a beer, or you could even buy us both a beer, and we would be highly appreciative of that.
Yeah. There are, of course, extra episodes if you want to hear us talk more. We like to call them half pints because in theory they were going to be shorter episodes, but they tend to not actually be that much shorter.
No.
And you'll get at least one a month of those, plus some other posts and stuff. All right. Well, if you are done listening to our sponsored ads and our self advertisement, I think it's time to move in to some army lists, Ben, for this event, which was a 700-point event. Played over 5 games over 2 days. Not sure who's up first, so let's see it.
All right, it is my army list up first. I just need to actually select the presentation so I can change slides. There we have it. As Sam said, it's 700 points. The event is, of course, Bilbo's birthday bash, hence my on-theme beer. And I was taking the Pits of Dol Guldur, just adding a few models to my 650 points list. In Warband 1, we've got Azog on the White Warg. He's got 1 Gundabad Orc Warrior with Spear, Shield, and Banner, 5 Gundabad Orc Warriors with Spear and Shield, 8 Hunter Orcs with Orc Bows, 1 Hunter Orc with a Warhorn, and 1 Fel Warg. In Warband number 2, we've got a Hunter Orc Captain. He's got 3 Hunter Orcs in his warband, 6 Gundabad Orcs with Shield and Spear, and 1 Fel Warg. And in the final warband, we've got another Hunter Orc Captain with 4 Hunter Orcs in his warband, 6 Gundabad Orcs with Spear and Shield, and 1 Fel Warg. So we've got a total of 18 Gundabad Orcs, and there are 16 Hunter Orcs, plus the 2 Captains and 3 Fel Wargs, for a total of 40 models.
Very nice, very nice. And 10 might.
Yeah, plenty of might, and of course, Azog's getting free heroic combat, so the Legendary Legion's good fun to play for all of those reasons. Speaking of Legendary Legions, perhaps from your beer, Sam, I suspect that you might also be playing a Legendary Legion. Why don't you tell us all about that?
All right, I was playing the Army of Gothmog, which if you've listened to the previous episode, you will know that I had an excellent time playing at 500 points, even though I did not do very well. So we have added 200 points to my 500 point army, but we'll go through it all. We've got Gothmog, the Lieutenant of Sauron, and he of course has a shield. No Warg, which many people question me about, but I'm still a fan of. And in his warband, we've got 1 Morannon Orc with Banner, Shield, and Spear. We've got 1 Orc Drummer. He's not a Morannon Orc Drummer, despite the fact he's converted to look like such. We've got 8 Morannon Orcs with Spear and Shield, and 8 Morannon Orcs with Shield. In Warband 2, this is a brand new added warband, we've got Guritz, Master of Reserves. He's got 4 Morannon Orcs with Spear and Shield, and 3 Morannon Orcs with Shield. And then coming back, making another appearance, we've got Guroth, Captain of the Morannon, and he's got 5 Morannon Orcs with Spear and Shield, and 5 Morannon Orcs with Shield. And finally, another new warband, we've got the Orc Shaman leading 5 Orc Warriors with Orc Bows. So, a grand total of 44 models, 5 bows, and 10 might. Not bad, not bad.
I really like this, Sam. I think, and as I'm sure we'll get into in your battle reports, but I think the biggest thing that you have to worry about is terror-causing armies who are backed up by a spellcaster with Sap Will.
Yeah.
But looks like a great army, and look forward to hearing how it does.
Yeah, it's fun. It's very simple game plan. Just push models forwards and, smash face.
Yeah, but when do you call time of the Orc? There's some nuance.
Yeah. All right, should we move into some games? Keep this trainer rolling around the bend?
We shall indeed. Let me take it away, Sam, with my game 1. So I will say that Chris had some fun things going on for this event. We had trivia before the event began, where you could win a chance to use a reroll.
Yeah.
Then there was more trivia where you could win a chance to make your opponent reroll a dice. And there was also trivia for, at least for the first round, for choosing the first scenario. I believe they were given the pool, and someone got to choose the scenario, and they chose A Clash by Moonlight.
Yes. All right, so everyone was playing Clash by Moonlight, which was pretty cool. Not a veto system for Bilbo during and on his birthday. So if you're viewing on YouTube, you can see the beautiful deployment zones put up. If you're not viewing, they're just 12-inch up deployment zones, nice and straightforward. We've got a game that lasts until one force has been reduced to 25% of its starting number. We've some scoring. You score 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. 2 if you kill the enemy leader. You score 3 victory points if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. If the enemy force is broken and your force is unbroken, instead you score 5. You score 1 victory point if you have at least 1 hero remaining at the end of the game. If you have at least 1 hero left alive and you've killed more heroes than your opponent, instead you score 3. If you have at least 1 hero remaining and your opponent has none, instead you score 5. And we have some special rules. We've got the Dark of the Night, which, due to limited visibility, models cannot be targeted by shooting magical powers or special abilities over 12 inches away. However, as it is much harder to avoid a shot in the dark, all shooting attacks gain a +1 when rolling to wound. Siege engines may still target people more than 12 inches away, but they never hit on a 6. So there we go, a little Clash by Moonlight for round 1.
Nice, nice. So yeah, Clash by Moonlight, and I was up against Andy, who had painted himself a nice new army. His first time doing this army. He'd just finished it the night before, and it was, of course, the Bjornings. Gotta love it. Love to see the Bjornings. We've got Bjorn, Grim Bjorn, and however many Bjornings. I think it's like 15 that you can cram in there. I will say, I've played Bjornings a couple of times now. I have yet to play against the Games Workshop models. I don't mind so much, if you don't want to pay the Forge World price for 15 Bjornings, get one blister of them, get some 3D prints, get some Victrix Vikings, whatever. But it's a little frustrating to never even see the bears, because Games Workshop does make models for those. And it's not bank-breaking to get Bjorn and Grim Bjorn, I don't think.
Yeah.
So, a little frustrating to never see the bears. And in fact, in this game, I did get confused as to which bear was which. Anyway, so we get into some nice simple deployment. He's got 3 bows, I've got 8 bows. No one's really going to be taking any shots this game because, of course, it's Dark of the Night rules. And we just get right into it. I take first turn priority and we rush up. He's got his army sort of spread out. For those of you who are listening, we're playing on just sort of a generic woodlands board. We've got a couple of woods, we've got some ruins scattered around. And basically, my plan here was to have Azog go kill some bears while my Hunter Orcs did their best to kill Bjornings. So I take first turn priority, we move up, nothing really happens. I take turn 2 priority, we move up, nothing really happens. He's got the bears, they of course transform into bears right on turn 1. And they are on opposite flanks from each other with his Bjorning spread out in a long, thin line. There's this sort of statue on a pedestal in the center of the board, so he's got his army. It's not that big, maybe 3 inches in diameter. He's got his army on either side of that, with the bears about as far away from each other as they can be, which is, if I'm honest, not how you want to run the bears. I think they want to be a bit more together than Andy had them. So we get into turn 3, where... At the end of turn 2, I made sure that I was outside of 6 from the bears. I'd moved up previously, to make sure that I was going to be in a safe range. So Andy takes turn 3 and just essentially moves his line up so that I can charge into him, and I charge right on in. In fact, because I wanted to charge in, that's right, I'm misremembering now. I call a move with my captain so that Azog can charge into Bjorn. I actually thought it was Grim Bjorn, but anyway, Azog charges into Bjorn, and my Hunter Orc battle line, backed up by Gundabad spears, basically moves up to engage him so that Azog can't get countercharged, and the Bjornings can just come running on into me. So, in the combat phase, Azog calls a strike, Bjorn calls a strike, and we get into that fight there. Azog, unfortunately, rolls a 2 on his strike, so he's only up to fight 9. Bjorn, of course, rolls a 3, gets up to fight 10. He only needed a 2, but, doesn't roll a 1. So Bjorn has got the high fight, but only rolls a 5 high. I've got Azog in there, and I think a couple of Gundabads with some, spear supports. I get a 4 high, and Azog spends another 2 points of might. So all the White Warg's might is now gone to get that, to push it to the 6 and make Bjorn spend a second point of might. I should say, too, that in the movement phase, Bjorn had countercalled with the move, so now Bjorn is actually his 3rd point of might. Bjorn is now out of might. He spent all of his might to win that fight, and he does manage to put 3 wounds through onto Azog, and I spend both points of fate, point of fate from the White Warg, point of fate from Azog, and still take another wound. Elsewhere in the combat phase, the Bjornings proceed to do what Bjornings sometimes do, Sam, which is to roll fistfuls of 6s to win the fights. And they kill my Hunter Orcs on 3s, and we took 7 casualties this turn, and managed to pull down 2 Bjornings in response. Grim Bjorn, importantly, charged into one of my Felwargs that was like all the way off on the flank. I had thought it, like I said, I thought it was Bjorn, so I'd set this Felwarg in a point where it was going to pull Bjorn out of the way, and then it turns out it was Grim Bjorn, and he charged into it anyway. So it did what I wanted it to, but Andy definitely should not have charged into that Felwarg. Or, maybe he should have even combated, because it's left Grim Bjorn quite a long way off on the flank. So, I decide to call surprise next turn, because we want to capitalize on the fact that the bears are out of position, and we want to mob around as many of the Bjornings as we can. So Azog goes back into Bjorn, the Hunter Orc battle line re-engages, and we get into some more killing. My Hunter Orc captain spends his last point of might to get the final wound on. Oh, actually, before I get into that, that's what I remember now what he spent it on. So of course, Azog calls a strike. Bjorn can't strike. Azog gets up to 10 this time, and Bjorn is trapped. I've got my Hunter Orc captain in there. In fact, I think I've got both Hunter Orc captains. I've got a pile of Gundabad's. Rolling fistfuls of dice. Azog's looking for wounds on 3s and puts through 5 wounds on his own. He's got 8 dice, gets through 5 wounds, and my Hunter Orc captain gets 1 wound through, and none of my troops get any wounds. So I decide to spend my Hunter Orc captain's last point of might to put a total of 7 wounds through onto Bjorn, who passes 1 bear save, leaving 6 wounds to go through. So even with 3 fate, we have managed to kill Bjorn this turn. I do lose another 5 orcs this turn, as those Bjornings just keep cleaving through my battle lines, and manage to kill 2 more of them in return. Get into turn 5 priority, which I win priority again this time, and we battle lines re-engage. Grimbjorn gets into the thick of things, and I've been hurled at by monsters a bunch of times now, Sam. I should see it coming. Didn't see it coming. Fortunately, Azog got to call a free heroic combat. Before Grimbjorn. Grimbjorn though also calls a combat. Azog's combat goes first. Azog kills his guy and goes running off into 2 other Bjornings. No, I'm sorry, tell a lie. I can't read my notes. Azog does get knocked off his warg this turn.
I was going to say, I see an Azog on foot and an Azog on warg.
Yeah, you can see him. This is a turn later. So Azog gets knocked off his warg this turn, but managed to fight his way back to his feet. We lose another 6 orcs this time and only kill 1 Bjorning in response. But that's okay, because I take turn 6 priority. Azog goes to fight 2 Bjornings. We managed to get a couple of orcs we managed to get 1 orc into Grimbjorn, so that he's locked in place, and we start to get traps onto the Bjornings. Azog calls a free heroic combat, but has to spend another 2 points of might to win his fight, and then fails to kill the 2 Bjornings that he's fighting. And but this time we managed to kill the orcs. The orcs are heating up. We've got some traps. We've wounded some Bjornings. We managed to kill 3 of them this turn and only lose another 2. And turn 7 goes to me. Azog's calling more heroic combats. Doesn't manage to kill the Bjornings that he's fighting with again. And it's getting pretty close, but Azog is out of might at the end of this turn. My last captain has to spend 1 point of might. I'm broken at the top of this turn, by the way, too. So my last captain, who's got might left, has to spend a point of might and a point of will to not run off the board, and then fight some Bjornings and loses the fight and has to spend his point of fate and still takes a wound. So my captain's taking a hurting, my other captain's out of might. I only managed to kill 1 Bjorning this turn, and so this is a game that ends on shatter, and I'm currently winning, but it could definitely flip. Like, both my captains are still alive, but they could definitely just get killed by a Bjorning. So far, I've managed to keep them out of combat, but enough troops have died at this point to where they have to start fighting Bjornings. So I'm starting to stab the Bjornings, and I'm stabbing the Bjornings, and I'm losing fights, and the Bjornings are not killing enough of my guys, and then the stab doesn't go through. When we get down to this last fight, I've got 3 orcs in combat with this Bjorning, who doesn't have a great axe. 100 orc, 2 Gundabad orcs. They've got him trapped. I lose the fight, and he inflicts no wounds on me. So I go to roll my stabs, going like, okay, I need 2 more guys to die, and the game will end. And I roll the Hunter Orc first, doesn't manage to stab himself. So I need 6s for the Gundabad Orcs to stab themselves to death. And I rolled 2 6s, and the Gundabad Orcs accidentally slipped on their knives and stabbed themselves to death for glory. And the game ended this turn, so it was an 8-5 victory for me.
Very nice.
Yeah, kind of an entertaining way to win the game. But it was definitely a bit of a nail-biter with Grimbjorn sort of sitting there in the backfield. Azog's down to 1 might, I think, and he's sitting there, sitting still on 2 might. So, a good game and kind of a funny way to end it there.
Did you not consider, because I think he said he only had like 3 great bows. Did you not consider staying 12 inches away for a turn? Because you've like 8 bows in this army that like will actually do some serious wounds. That with +1 to wound or like wound Bjornings on 4s. So did you consider going for
Yeah,
two
but I hit on
rounds of shooting?
fives.
So,
Yeah, I guess I could have done.
I mean, it sounds
But
like what
I
you
mean,
ended up doing was
they're mostly in
charging in
there
and
to
then
have some
like
bows in case.
what?
I was saying I could have done, but the bows are mostly token. I didn't really think about it. They do hit on
That's
fives as well.
so. I mean, they're orcs. You know, like you've got if you shoot 14 of them, that's got to be close to 5 hits, and then that's a
Yeah,
1.5 dead Beornings. And if you roll a little bit hot, I don't know. I would have considered it.
that's a
Sorry,
good
I
point.
would have
That's a
done
good
it.
point.
All right. Well, should we move on into my game?
Yes, yes. Take it away, Sam. Tell me all about it.
All right, Ben. Well, I was playing Mr. Rob. Rob, who ran the Richmond Open and was the ringer in this tournament. And he was playing an Isengard army. Ben, his Isengard army was led by Lurtz. It had Ugluk. It had Thryden. And it had the Oathmaker. So he had a decent number of Wildmen, a couple of
Nice.
Dunlending Cavs, a couple of Cribbane, and then a bunch of tin can orcs, a few scouts. So he sort of had a little bit of everything, and he had 4 crossbows, I think it was. And we
Nice.
were playing on this sort of like board with some scattered trees, and importantly, if you're viewing, you can see, but it had this like ruin in the middle of it. That's one of the old classic like super flat Middle Earth ruins that came in that green box, but it's been built up on a bit of foam, so it's got like a half an inch of elevation, which Rob asked about at the beginning of the game, and we decided it wasn't going to restrict movement getting up, but it was a defended object. I guess if you're viewing, Ben has decided he's got to go somewhere, and hopefully we'll be back. I will.
Sorry, my dog is barking. Trying to get it to be quiet.
Gotcha. All right, so turn 1. So we basically just deployed in a line. This is what I do with the entire army. It's like Gothmog mostly in the center and plop some dudes down. In this instance, I had the shaman kind of close and behind Gothmog. I had Guroth off on the right-hand flank and Guritz on the left. First turn goes to Rob, and he just moves forwards. I think he had a drum as well. So we both drummed. I think he had a drum. Did he have a drum? Anyway, doesn't matter. We basically both just rushed this ruin in the middle, and we all moved far enough that there was no shooting. Plus, we were probably still out of range. Turn 2 goes to me, and I decide I'm going to play it cagey this game or this turn. So I moved to make sure I was outside of 6 inches of his line. Basically, like I didn't really like. Rob was clearly trying to fight on this building, and I didn't really want to engage him on the building because I was like, this is just going to be super annoying. He's going to have high fight, and if I win, I'm going to be rolling in the ways. So I put a bunch of my guys like sort of off the building. I wasn't willing to have a fight on it, and then stayed 6 inches away and out of charge range of everyone with the rest of my army. And then I think Rob basically just like moved up. He took the walls of this bit, or took the like high ground on this building, and then moved some of his stuff up. And moved a bunch of his Dunland cavalry in. Turn 3 goes to Rob, and he basically, I think he just kind of mostly stays where he is. I call a channel with my shaman because as we were talking on the drive, you were asking like, are you gonna ever try channeling Fury? And I was like, this is the game to try it because nothing's gonna sap his will. This is great. I can channel it, so I channel it. Pretty stupidly, you can see in this picture, he's just like standing there, and Rob charges it with a Cribbane before he gets to cast his spell, so effectively just like cancels my channel, which was a little annoying. And then I think he gets in with basically the cavalry and a few other models. And we get into some combats, but basically I charge the people on the ground that I can reach. I'm just not fighting. I just ignore the guys on the building, basically. And we get into some combats, and Ugluk calls a combat. He's fighting like 2 Moran and Orcs. And Thryden calls a combat. Thryden's combat goes first. He kills the the orc he's in combat with, charges into another couple of orcs. I think they were basically fighting my archers. Ugluk loses his combat, decides not to spend the two. I think he like rolled a 2 high or something, or not a 2 high, a 4 high. He decides not to spend his last 2 points of might, which I think was the right choice. But I do manage to put a wound on him. I cause 1 wound, and he fails but he passes his fate. But I kill 7 or 5 models and lose 7 this turn. So turn 4 goes to me, and Ugluk calls a move. Guritz responds with a move as well. I believe the move goes to me, and I'm able to cancel Ugluk's move and jam into all of this cavalry, and then that of course means it's my priority, and just pile in on this corner, the far flank of all these wild men. And Rob responds by piling some guys down. He's still got a decent chunk of people in the fort. I've done a decent job of like sending 1 model to fight a couple in a doorway kind of thing. But I decide that this is the time of the orc, Ben. We've basically almost every single one of my models is fighting somebody. I've got a bunch of men we're fighting. Like, we might as well call the time of the orc now. So when I do, I like to call a bunch of heroic combats. So Guroth calls a heroic combat. Guritz calls a heroic combat, and I think Gothmog is in combat with Thryden, and they're the same fight, and Thryden didn't call a strike or anything, so Gothmog just left it at that. I was like, I'll save it. I probably should have struck, but whatever. So we get into some fights, and Guroth's combat, he kills the 2 guys he's into, piles into another couple. Gurit's combat, he kills a couple of guys. And we just like get into this. My shaman is is being attacked by some Urukai or something and loses, but passes his fate. And we get to the fight with Gothmog, who's fighting Thryden. The fight goes to Thryden, unfortunately, and he does 1 wound to Lurtz, which
to Gothmog.
Pardon? Yeah, sorry. 1 wound to Gothmog, yes. Yeah, 1 wound to Gothmog. So I passed my fate, and I was like, great, he doesn't take any wounds. And Rob was like, no, he still takes 1 because of Mighty Blow, which I didn't think was correct, but Mighty Blow's like, if you successfully cause a wound, it becomes 2. So anyway, which if you pass with fate, it's no longer a success, as we talked about later, and therefore it would have stopped it, which is how I thought it worked, but that was fine. So Gothmog takes a wound, whatever, not a big deal. But I do manage to kill 11 models this turn. A bunch of them are just wild men, so it's not really that big of a deal. But I kill 11 and only lose 3, so it was definitely the time of the orc. Turn 5 goes to Rob, and I call a move using his last point of might with Guritz. And Lurtz calls a move in response. And I believe that triggers Lurtz is close enough to trigger Gothmog's Master of Battle at this point, so he also calls a move. So basically, which I then was able to chain it to tag Lurtz up and get like the whole flank being like, I'm deciding where the fights are, but he is the other side. So basically, there's not too much left in this game. We get into combat. I think I'm able to get I trap Lurtz with Guroth and a bunch of orcs. Guroth calls a strike. Lurtz calls a strike. I win the fight. So Lurtz is like unwounded, still has his fate, and Guroth rolls his 4 dice and gets 6, 6, 6, and a 5, and so does 4 wounds to Lurtz without having to roll for anyone else, and just like minces Lurtz in 1 combat. Gothmog kills Thryden this turn, and I kill another 4 or 5 models. So then basically what ends up happening after this is the next turn goes to Rob, and Rob decides to retreat everyone onto the, as he called it, the Alamo, this ruin in the middle. And so I was still unbroken. I hadn't lost that. I think it looks like I lost 10, 12 models at this point out of my 44. So I still have like a huge number of models, and it was basically like, I'm trying to quickly move. We're running out of time because we started a little bit late, and I'm trying to move all of my guys to do some fights, and I'm fighting, taking these into ways and stuff, and like eventually I get to a point where I'm like about ready to. I've fully encircled this thing, and can jump on, but there's this guy standing next to us, and this is like, it was fine. He was obviously buddies with Rob, but he had finished his game and started chatting, which we were like with 15 to 10 minutes left, and I was like, man, just hold off for like 5 more minutes, let us wrap up this game, because he's really close to being quartered. And the only reason I cared was because he had a drum up there and the Wild Man Oathkeeper up there as well, who was also like out of stats. So I had 2 very killable characters I was trying to kill, and I basically had like, I would have had 2 turns where I would have been on there, not taking in the ways and stuff. Anyway, so like, as I'm being like, hey, trying to do all this stuff, and this guy's chatting, he's like, oh, well, you can just call it, so we called it, which again was fine, but it was just a little bit like the last 2 turns took like extra long because somebody was like engaging with my opponent while he's still playing the game, which was, I got a major win. It was, what did I don't think I wrote it down. I did not write it down, but it was a major victory. But I was
on the table next to you. I believe it was 10-1.
Yeah, that sounds right. But yeah, so it was a fun game. I really liked playing Rob. It was a game that, even though I was playing against an evil army, I got to kill a bunch of men, which was fun. So nice. A victory for the army of Gothmog.
Nice. So Chris had a bingo sheet, not unlike our tournament bingo going on, and people who scored bingos or completed various other tasks, such as killing heroes or killing generals or quartering armies or breaking opponents. It was different each round. The first couple of people got to do that. I think the first one who got to do that got to pick the scenario for next round. So we were drawing out of the Maelstrom pool, and whoever chose to play Hold Ground. Yeah. Shall I give us a run through of this one, Sam, since you did the last one?
Sounds good to me.
All right, Scenario 3, Hold Ground. We've got a Maelstrom deployment, as you can see on the screen here. There is, of course, no deployment zone in Maelstrom. You just walk onto the board. And we have a central objective. You score 3 victory points if you have more models within 6 inches of the objective marker than your opponent. If you have twice as many models within 6 inches of the objective marker than your opponent, you instead score 5 victory points. If you have 3 times as many, you instead score 7 victory points. You cause 1 wound for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. 1 victory point for causing 1 or more wounds to the enemy leader. 2 if you kill them. 1 victory point if the enemy force is broken at the end of the game. 3 if they are broken and you are not.
All right.
So there you have it. Hold Ground. And for my game 2, Sam, I was playing against Stephen of Now for Wrath, who has his own YouTube channel, does his own battle reports. In fact, I believe today he just released his battle reports of this very same event. Today, as in recording day. So I still haven't checked it out, but I encourage you to go check him out, Now for Wrath. Great guy. And he was playing the assault on Lothlorien Legendary Legion with Musga, Durzag, Ashrak, and an Orc Captain on a Warg.
I'm going to interject here and say that if you're checking him out on YouTube, it's Now for Wrath Gaming.
Now for Wrath Gaming.
It's probably a small enough YouTube channel, bigger than ours, but it's a small enough YouTube channel that having that gaming in there is probably relatively essential at the time being to find it. So.
Fair enough. So we're playing Maelstrom, and Stephen won the first priority, which is great as far as I am concerned. So he starts rolling with Ashrak, and Ashrak rolls a 2 for his Maelstrom deployment and decides to spend his only point of might to turn it into a 1 and to not arrive on the board. So next we roll for Musga, and Musga rolls a 1 and does not arrive on the board. So Stephen rolls Durzag next, and Durzag gets a 6 and comes in on the, we'll call it the southern board edge, on the top of this cool hill. And the Orc Captain also rolls a 6 and comes in on the middle of that northern board edge next to Durzag as well. So it's over to me, and I roll up with Azog first. I always like to start with the leader so we know where he's going. And Azog rolls a 2, and after a brief thought, Sam, I spent 2 points of might to choose where Azog arrives and decided to put him down right next to Durzag. And then I roll for my next captain, and he rolls a 1 and does not arrive. And I roll for my second captain, and he rolls a 6 and comes on the board directly behind Azog as well. So we've got 2/3 of my army on the flank of half of Stephen's army. And I'm feeling pretty good about just flash killing Durzag here, Sam, because I decided to call surprise as well. Just blow it on turn 2. Azog is within 6 inches of Durzag. There will be no moves called by that Orc Captain. Durzag. There will be no moves called by Durzag. We're just going to go right in. So we charge right on in. We move in a bunch of Hunter Orcs. Azog goes in. Azog charges into Durzag and a Goblin Prowler, I think, that was next to him, or a Spider, maybe. There's something in there. And calls a free heroic combat. And Durzag rolls the 6, and Azog rolls a 5, so has to spend a point of might to win that fight, but then just absolutely flattens Durzag, the spider that he's in combat with, and moves on to go kill another 2 goblins, and the rest of my orcs gang up on some goblins, and we get a total of 6 kills this turn and only lose 2 in return. So I spent a lot of resources to do that, but I don't know, flash killing a character who's a wizard who's yet to spend any will felt pretty good. That's much later in the game. So onwards into turn 3, where Stephen takes priority. I should say too, at the end of turn 2, after all these charges and stuff have gone on, my captain rolls another 1 for his deployment. Musgo rolls a 3 and spends a point of might to come in on the northern edge, on the opposite table side from where all of this is going on. And Ashrak rolls a 1 and does not arrive this turn. So turn 3, priority goes to Stephen. Musgo is running towards the middle of the board. The Orc Captain has abandoned the last of Durzag's warband, and the Warg Riders and Spiders in the Orc Captain's warband are running for the middle, and the Orcs in his warband are legging it for the middle as well. Azog and his warriors move in and mop up the rest of the goblins. Azog calls another free heroic combat, gets another couple of kills. Ashrak rolls another 1 for his Maelstrom roll and does not arrive this turn either. And my Orc Captain rolls a 4 and decides to move on directly behind Musgo. So he's now in threat range of Musgo. So, and Stephen, of course, when he deployed Musgo, he came on last turn, moved up 6 inches, like you do with a caster. I think it's probably second nature. But you want to watch out for it in Maelstrom, as he's got Musgo in the back. So there's a warband of 12 Orcs or whatever. Musgo's behind them. So when my captain comes on, now Musgo is within charge range of my captain and his entire warband. So Musgo has to call a move. I win priority on the next turn, and Musgo calls a move to get away from my captain. I debated calling a counter move, but was pretty much just happy to let him move first and save my might for later. So Musgo moves. Basically, his warband runs towards the center, away from my captain's warband. The Orc Captain from the dregs of Durzag's warband that I haven't killed are running towards the middle of the board, and I mop up the last of that warband, kill another 3 kills this turn. But basically, the rest of my warriors are leaving the handful of goblins left behind, and we're just mobbing towards the center as well. So we get on to turn 6, where I take priority, and Stephen's Orc Captain calls a move. Oh no, I'm sorry. We're on to turn 5. I got a turn at turn 5. Stephen takes priority, and my Orc Captain calls a move. Basically, I want to slow down Musgo's warband, so we charge on into the back of his warband, trying to engage some guys over there. They countercharge, get a couple more traps on my guys, and I managed to kill 3 of that warband. I managed to kill 3 of them, but lose 4 in return. So not a great trade for me. I should say too that for the last 2 turns, this turn included, Ashrak has rolled 1s for his Maelstrom, and so we're at turn 5, and Ashrak has yet to arrive. And the Orc captain this turn spends a point of his might to call heroic combat, and I think just to kill some more of my guys. All right, so turn 6. I take priority. Azog is now again within threat range of the center of the board. Getting into some kills, starting to kill the orcs that are in the middle of the board. I charge in. Orc captain goes in. Stephen calls another move with his captain this turn, and I don't have a counter move, so I guess he moves first there. But Azog calls a free heroic combat, has to spend another 2 points of might to win that duel, so he's now down to only 1 might left. But basically what he's doing is, if you look at this picture, you can see where Azog is, and he's heading towards Mudsger, who's on the outside of Stephen's army. Azog's on the outside of mine, and there's just one orc and his control zone between Azog and Mudsger. So Azog calls his heroic combat, and has to spend 2 points of might to win the fight, kills his guys, and we kill a total of 9 of Stephen's models this turn and only lose 3. But importantly, Ashrak has finally arrived. Look to the east, Sam, on the dawn of the 6th turn, for that is when Ashrak finally arrived with his warband.
Did Azog get into Mudsger and kill him?
No, he didn't. But he was basically sitting right next to Mudsger. Within threat range of Mudsger. So turn 7, Stephen takes priority.
Oh, so
my captain calls him.
You're saying after the combat he was in threat range of him.
Yeah, so he calls his combat and goes into the next orc because I couldn't move into Ashrak because of that orc's control zone.
Gotcha.
So my captain calls a move. We charge in. Azog charges into Mudsger and another orc just because of the control zones. Had to go into 2 of them. And causes free heroic combat because that's what you do, and loses the fight. I've burned through so many of his resources at this point. He rolled like a 2 high, had a banner reroll into a 3, and takes 2 wounds and burns both of his fate. So he's down to no fate, 1 wound, and has been stabbed by Mudsger, which was a real shame to have flubbed that roll.
So fails both of his fate.
Yeah, no, he passed the fate. There was just enough dice coming back my way that I think I passed 1 of them, maybe, but I lost 2 points of fate and took 2 wounds.
Gotcha.
And I only got another, and it was a bad turn for my army. I took 4 casualties and only inflicted 2 kills. And I'd sort of overextended. I'd pushed past the center in an attempt to keep Mudsger and his warband out of the way. And Asherak and his warband have been moving in, and all of a sudden things are starting to get just a little bit squiff. We get into the next turn where I take priority and we charge in again. But unfortunately, in the combat phase, Azog fighting another orc. Mudsger has managed to retreat behind some orcs, spear supporting. Azog causes free heroic combat. He's going to kill this orc and charge into Mudsger, loses the fight and gets killed by the orc. Brought low by the lone orc, and all of a sudden this game is falling apart. Well, I've been in the driving seat. I broke Stephen last turn, and all of a sudden Azog's dead. We both kill another 6 of each other this turn. So now I'm broken. My leader's gone, and we're relying on. I managed to keep my warhorn alive. But we're relying on the hunter orcs and the warhorn, hunter orc captains and the warhorn to keep me around. And unfortunately, I'm also out of might on all my heroes. Stephen's out of might on all his heroes, but he takes next turn priority and is basically able to maneuver in such a way that we're like neck and neck for the middle now. I think I had maybe 1 more guy, so it just comes down to the fights on the last turn. And basically, when we went to tally up bodies around the center, Stephen had 1 more guy than me in the middle, and that was all. That was all she wrote. So a really great game. I lost this one 6-1. I think I got a little bit greedy and pushed my battle line. If you look at this image, you can sort of see that a lot of my guys are outside of 6 of the objective there. Basically my goal, but in the entirety of Stephen's army is outside of 6, but he was able to then take the next priority and sort of wrap around and just get enough bodies in the middle that he just scrooched me out, killed a couple few of my hunter orcs, and snuck the win.
I think you should have called
a really great game.
I think you should have called a move to try and catch Mudsger's warband early in the game.
Yeah,
like it would have been
I probably should have
roll off. But if you went in and you got to put a hunter orc captain into him and like another hunter orc and then push past him, if you win, he's dead. Yeah. Or at the very least, because later, like 2 turns later or a turn later, you said you called a move to slow him down. But this time, to try and slow that warband down. So why not do it on the,
Yeah, no, you're right.
But
For sure. I think I didn't do it. I didn't do it the first time because he'd already called the move, and I was like, well, he's already spent the might. Happy to watch him spend the resources.
right, but you watch him
And
spend
then
the
on the
resource,
next turn,
and then
he
on
didn't have any more might over there to spend.
Right, but then you spend one of your two, and if yes, it's a 50-50 roll off, but either way, he's still spent one, you still have one, and if it goes your way, like he's burnt a resource and maybe a dead character.
Yeah, no, you're right. I definitely should have kept. I had the pressure, and I should have kept it on, and then overextending in the middle just a little bit. If I just kept my forces back.
Oh well.
But oh well, an absolutely fantastic game. All right, Sam, tell me about your game too.
All right, well, this will be quick. It was not a quick game. It was a very long one, but I was playing Chris, who was playing the Rise of the Necromancer Legendary Legion. He had the Necromancer, and then I didn't bother writing down the ring rates he had. He had 6 of them, right? So he had the Lingering Shadow, the Witch King, the Forsaken, the Slayer of Men.
There are 2 Slayers of Men.
Two Slayers of Men, and the Dark Headsman.
Nice, yeah.
And we were playing Hold Ground, so I have 40-something models, he has very few models, and we were playing on this board. You can't really see from this picture. There may be another one if you just want to move to the next picture. No, you can't see it anyway. So if you're viewing, you can see a little bit of them, but if you're not, you can't see them at all, and you can't really see them either. We were playing on this board with these big, they're probably like 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches deep, like wide, by like 8-inch long, 6-inch tall castle wall sections. They're clearly for some other game, I'm not really sure. Anyway, so there's a bunch of them just scattered across the board as these random walls, which will come into my talking about this game later. I'm not even going to go through the turns. I'm basically just going to tell you what happened is he was able to eventually sap the will of my shaman, so I didn't have Fury up. He's got Ancient Evil and Harboring of Evil. I'm taking Courage tests on 9. I did a reasonably good job of passing the first few turns worth of Courage tests. I killed Wraiths repeatedly. In the entire game, he failed 1 return save, which of course he had the might to make the Wraith come back. And he just killed my army slowly but surely, and a bunch of them ran
So
off.
if you don't know, the Legendary Legion, or just what the Wraiths do is they come back on a roll of a 2 or better. The Wraiths, after you kill them, they return.
Right.
So,
So it's usually a 3, but if you have the Necromancer, it's a 2. And you can spend might on the roll. The Necromancer can cast multiple spells a turn, and whatever. He killed all anyway. So it was a major loss, 12-0. I think he tabled me, and it wasn't a game at all, really, because it was can you pass a bunch of 9+ courage tests, and it was essentially can Chris then fail his 1+ roll, and you have to fail it 3 times, assuming he spends might on nothing else, because the first one he rolls. All of the raids except for the Witch King have 2 might. He'll spend a might. The second one, he'll spend a might, and then the third one you roll, it dies. So I didn't kill.
And then the second you're broken, your whole army just evaporates.
Yeah, I didn't kill. I mean, Gothmog was around for most of the game, and Gothmog's got a 12-inch standfast that affects heroes as well. But yeah, he killed enough models that he broke me. He killed enough models that he killed enough models that he had 6 models and I had none by the center, so it was a 12-0 victory. This was a game that, again, I really like Chris. He's a super good dude, and it was a fun enough game. But it was I had to rally to have the energy to be excited to just pull my models off by the fistful and not do anything. It's like all hero armies are, I think, kind of not fun to play against because you don't get to see, you never kill anything, essentially. This was probably like the only Maelstrom mission that was good for him, or like the only objective mission that was good for him. So, a point to that. It's nice that it wasn't the veto system, because this would just have been a non-game if it had been one of the other ones, So just a shame that as reporting and as the hero of this tale, it was a non-game for me. Because the only way, and this is why I brought up the terrain, the only way I could have won this game was to essentially not play, like
Sure.
the Whopper supercomputer. And what I would have done is I just would have hidden. Because my maelstrom rolls were pretty good. So I just would have. I have a drum and I have 6 might I can spend on marches. So I would have just hidden in a corner, watched the clock. As soon as he started getting close, I would have drummed and marched myself off to another corner, and just done that for. I think the games were 2 hours. Were they 2-hour rounds? I would have done that for an hour and 50 minutes, and then I would have drummed and marched myself to the center of the board and be like, "You now have 10 minutes to kill enough orcs that 6 models can hold the center objective." Should be impossible. But I came to play with toys, not to desperately win an event at any cost necessary. So I just jammed everything into the center. I mean, the other thing I should have done, which I didn't do, is I spent the time to take these big courage tests. I should have just made a ring around the center and just being like, done the control zones in such a way that he essentially has to charge 2 models, because he's always going to be entering in because of how those work, and have them backed up with spears, and just being like, well, at least we would have played more turns, and it would have hopefully been over quicker, because what took forever in the game was me being like, nope, that's not a 9, that's not a 9, that's not a 9, So, oh well.
Well, I think, Sam, we are going to leave you there for Bilbo's Birthday Bash.
Yes.
We'll be back with our final 3 games in part 2 of these battle reports.
Yeah, definitely. Hopefully they'll be more interesting. Certainly that second one that I played was, like I said, it was a fun game. Thoroughly enjoyed my opponent, but just sort of not really worth talking through. And then this turn, he killed 3 orcs. I killed 1 wraith, and it came back. He chilled this dude. So yeah.
Although I think your archers managed to shoot the lingering shadow, which is
turn 1.
Of course, it came back, but worthy of note.
Turn 1 or 2, I moved my 5 orc archers forwards 4.5 inches because they were on a drum. I rolled 4 6s and killed the lingering shadow. It was awesome. My archers were on fire. There was another time where all 5 of them hit a ring wraith or something. It was great. But they just come back. So, but yeah. So that's it. That's it for episode 55 of Gondor Calls for Ale. We will be back in 2 short weeks with episode 56 for the thrilling conclusion of Bilbo's Birthday Bash. And we appreciate you taking the time to watch and listen to us ramble.
Yeah, if you enjoyed it, give the channel a like, subscribe, all that stuff. We do appreciate it.
We surely do. Thank you for listening to Gondor Calls for Ale. We hope you have enjoyed this episode. We, at Gondor Calls for Ale, are officially sponsored by the Baron of Dice, the producer of premium wargaming dice. These beautifully hand-swirled resin dice have no micro bubbles and are therefore perfectly balanced. With over 3,000 variants and unique designs, nearly every tabletop gaming system is represented. So check out the description of this episode for a link and a discount code. Go buy yourself some new dice and let the good times roll. We at Gondor Calls for Ale are not associated with Games Workshop, New Line Cinema, or the Tolkien Estate. We hope we have not misrepresented or offended anyone. These recordings are strictly recollections of games we've played and are not commentaries on the character or competence of our opponents. They are intended purely for entertainment, and we hope they will be taken as such. You can find us on Patreon, see the link in the description. Supporting Gondor Calls for Ale there helps us continue to produce these episodes. You can find us on Instagram at Gondor_calls_for_ale. Feel free to send us a message there. Or on Facebook as Gondor Calls for Ale, another great place to send us a message. Or you can send us an email at gondorcallsforale@gmail.com. As Boromir, Captain of the White Tower, once said, remember today, listener, today this episode was good.